I mentioned before, this opens up a lot of opportunities really for Esubacz to now draft around their whole composition of being that AD damage, since Lilia is that AP source that they need, which is going to be now in the jungle.
Yeah, a nice bit of switch up here. I mean, we've been seeing a lot of AD jungles for pretty much the best of these past 2 days, and nice to see that Lilia comes through. Like you said, she's going to be reliant on those AP items though, so there seems to need to be either a lot of safeguards on the side of ESB for the Lilia, or there needs to be something on the side of Almighty Capybaras for them to be able to kind of lock her down in the jungle, put a bit of a aggression onto her, a bit of oppression as well, so she can't actually get those 3 items. But it looks like Almighty Capybaras are going to go for the staple picks that ESB failed with today, but was very successful with yesterday.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty surprising. They're like, okay, we're just going to play your draft, but play it even better than what you did, and we're going to show you how it's done. That's kind of the way that this draft is going at the moment. Again, the one big thing that Lilia... Oh, look, and then Jarvan's on this. Are we just switching sides now? Like, Jarvan's being picked? This also makes me feel like this is... I don't know where this Jarvan is going or where this Lilia is going now, because both of them are normally junglers. Maybe one of them will go into the Baron lane. Could be seeing maybe Jarvan or Lilia in the Baron lane, or even maybe Jarvan support. Could be pretty interesting as well, because especially the ultimate, that Cataclysm, we know how annoying that can be. But as I was mentioning just briefly before, you know, with Lilia, she gains a bunch of movement speed. She has so much damage, and she's so difficult to try and lock down during a fight. You know, she can easily dodge away from things like the Dark Binding, for example, for Morgana. So picking that Vi is a great pick against that Lilia to try and lock down that Lilia and stop her from moving around a bunch during fights.
Yeah, the Jarvan 4 picks definitely caught me off guard there, but I feel like now that it's been put there, it's got to be either support or Baron lane. I don't think that Lydia's going to go and sit anywhere else. I don't think she necessarily thrives in lane as well. She needs to kind of have a freedom to go around, get as many camps as possible, and just kind of feel like she is under the radar, where she's not actually being focused in lane and being potentially ganked as well. So I feel like she will definitely be in the jungle, whereas the Jarvan will be falling into place after this next ban. But we see the Yonek ban come through as well, so trying to just take away either jungle or mid lane picks as well, even though the Morgana has been taken off. It's going to be Vi for the jungle for Almighty Capybaras. They are going to take the Vi and say, hey, look, we're going to go for your comp. Your comp was very solid. Maybe mix it up a little bit here with the support pick. Are they looking to hover over the Leona, Galio, or going for their draft game 1?
Exactly the same. I don't think there's any difference. It is actually the exact same draft as what Esubacz did in game number 1. Oh, a Swain as well. Okay, that's an interesting pick. I mean, it looks like... Okay, now I'm even more confused.
Yeah, because I mean, it could be Swain's support.
Jarvan support, Xayah bot lane, Swain mid, Olaf top, Lilia jungle. That's my prediction. I think that's what it's probably going to be, but it's a bit all over the place. There is a bunch of champions being picked, but the one difference is that Fiora is going to go into the top lane instead of the Renekton. Obviously, Renekton got really heavily shut down in that previous game. The thing with Renekton is if you do fall behind in the early game, then it's going to be really difficult for you to try to catch up afterwards, whereas Fiora has a lot better scaling. But yeah, looks like it is going to be Lilia jungle, Olaf top, Swain mid, and Xayah Jarvan. So we get Jarvan support, which is going to be really interesting because, again, as we mentioned, you know, kind of similar to like Camille support. You use your ultimate, you use it to effectiveness. You're able to lock champions in place. And again, you're against a Severe, you're against a Morgana. So I don't know. I mean, it just seems like the tables have turned and the draft has completely flipped. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it's the same as game number 1, then Esubacz should win this, right? Right?
Esubacz? Right. I mean, do you mean Almighty Capybaras should win the first game?
No, as in like with the draft swapping. It's like the draft is swapped. You know, Esubacz was on the losing side draft. Feather Roots, whether it comes from her ultimate as well, she has a lot of good self-peeling. That means her support can actually be more of an engaged support, like Jarvan, that can go in, try and get onto the back line. And if anyone tries to dive onto the Xayah, like Vi, for example, you can just use your ultimate to get away. You can use your ultimate to kind of cancel Vi's ultimate. But here we go. Game number 2 between Esubacz on the blue side and Almighty Capybara on the red side of the map. Phase Rush is the option for Jarvan, so wants to be getting a little bit of extra movement speed, but I think the big reason why Phase Rush is maybe taken here is the extra cooldown reduction that you get when you proc Phase Rush, so you can try and use that flag and drag more often during a fight.
Yeah, it looks like Timing 1 has actually taken the Severe for himself, and it looks like Morgana is going to go down to the mid lane there to be the to the Dragon lane, sorry, to be the APC. So a little bit of a switcheroo for the draft that was very similar to ESB's in game 1, but definitely being formulated already. Just those lane selections alone have already been changed up to give it more of that Capybara flair that we know that this team loves to display.
Yeah, Morgana just going down the bot lane at the moment. Both these bot lanes are just going to be farming up. You're going to be see the Swain farming up over time. The Morgana is just going to be putting down her pool like that. Just be doing a bunch of damage, trying to stack up her Arcane Comet. And you're seeing both the marksmen again in the bottom side of the map. There's a little bit of a skirmish here happening in top side. I mean, the Scuttle Crab's not even up yet, so I'm not really too sure what they're skirmishing over. As Jarvan is actually caught out here, and both the Xayah and the Jarvan has to use their flash. And that does mean that Almighty Capybara can look for an invade here onto the Lilia.
Look for an invade, but also look to just shut down that blue buff as well. And it looks like they're able to actually successfully get it. And then Olaf goes in onto the ore and does a bit of damage, but it means that Colo is able to actually get out of there alive. Just kind of using him as a bit of a carrot dangling from a stick, right? Like, hey, come and get me. We have Severe in the mid lane. We could basically turn this around if we really wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it gave them the advantage as well. That's the thing. They were kind of using them as bait right now. They were like, okay, here we go. We're going to be going in. We're going to be using them as bait. And Lily actually used the flash to try and take away the blue buff because it was being taken there by Shin. But already you can see the aggression from Almighty Capybara. Maybe with an overstep from Esubacz in the river. They just walked up in the river for kind of no reason. They were completely caught out. Both Jarvan and Xayah had to use their flash, so they weren't able to join that fight very easily. And that gave them the advantage to try and invade. And you can see that already that has given that jungler Shin already a 200 gold lead right now. And it's going to be carry on farming through the jungle.
Yeah, carry on farming through the jungle. We can see that Xayah is picking up those gluttonous greaves, obviously, to give over the Omnivamp to herself to keep herself a bit more sustainable if she has to go 1v1 in those lanes. And there's not around by anybody else. Kolos there almost gets in, trapped down by a 2v1, but Vi going in with a Vault Breaker, not actually connecting, but there is the ultimate, getting the knock up onto the Jarvan. Jarvan having to force get out of there with his first and third ability.
Yeah, Orton actually going back in here. Maybe he could be going a little bit too deep, dashing forward. First blood onto the Xayah. And it's someone that you do not want to give first blood away. A bit of a crazy skirmish, as you mentioned. The cease and desist coming through from the Vi doing quite a lot to try and shut down the Jarvan, but the Jarvan easily able to escape. Not really the right target that you want to focus on here if you are the Vi, but it's very difficult to actually pick a target if you're playing the Vi in this game because the Xayah can just use her ultimate, the Jarvan can flag and drag away, the Olaf can also use the ultimate as well, so it's very difficult to try and find that right opportunity as there is a dive going here onto the Olaf, but there's a Jarvan right behind them as well, and that gives time for the Olaf to flash in, and both Severe and Fiora have to flash away, but they still keep up the pressure in this top lane with the Astarte Scorpion being spawned.
Yeah, I just want to go back on the point there about Vi with the cease and desist, right? I mean, it also gets negated by the Sanguine Pool from Swain as well. So it's like you said, it's definitely something she has to think about. You can't just be like, right, random, let's go for this person. And it just hopefully that the playmate comes through. But speaking of playmaking, it's actually Xayah that gets taken down there. So obviously, first blood moments ago now gets taken down by Vi a few moments later. So bringing that gold lead back up to the Capybaras once more. Only by a few hundred though, but I think this is a little bit of a shining light for Esubacz because this was not the same pace that Almighty Capybaras had in game 1, right? They were a few K gold ahead at this point in the game.
Yeah, it means that now they have like maybe a bit more of opportunity, as you can see there, Severe being able to escape. really nice, actually. Severe actually deciding to go for Hex Flash in the end. And if you don't know that, you can actually kind of just tap Hex Flash now to get over the Jarvan wall. So really nice adaptation here from timing. We didn't see Nedro take it in the first game on Severe, but you're seeing how much Hex Flash can be really beneficial against the composition of Esubacz. If you do get caught by that Cataclysm, you can just use a Hex Flash over the wall, and then Jarvan can't really lock down anymore. So really nice there, as both objectives are spawning right now and getting into the fray as both teams look to try and get a fight here towards this gorilla turret.
Yeah, it makes that Cataclysm a lot less catastrophic. But speaking of catastrophic, it is going to be Esubacz getting actual point on the board within these neutral objectives. Getting that gorilla turret is going to be able to be put down in one of these lanes to help assist with pushing the T1s. And it feels like that the mid lane T1 or the Baron one would be probably the most sought for objective, right? Because they're already damaged and they give over a lot more room for your team. The Ornn ulti coming through is going to whiff and only hit the Xayah into the back lane there. We see that Swain is trying to give a bit of poke damage over. It doesn't look like the Gorilla Turret's going to be alive long enough or even functioning long enough, because it's a turret, not a human. And trying to take that T1 is not going to be the falter for the side of Almighty Capybara Elites. They do decide to switch their focus to the Mountain Drake. Lilia going in with a bit of a long-range poke with Severe as well, trying to get that proxy damage as well onto the nearby enemies that on ESB. Oh, who got that one? Who got it? ESB is still able to go in and steal the Mountain Drake.
Yeah, ESBs are being able to secure that Drake Esubacz, and you can see the movement speed here from the Lilia being so annoying to deal with, and you can see that the Dark Binding and nothing can really catch her, but eventually Vi is able to go over the wall and secure that kill. So Almighty Capybara do come ahead in the kills, but the big thing is Olaf is still pushing in this Baron lane this entire time. He has not roamed at all. You can see that Olaf is going to be able to secure the first tower in the Baron lane. They were also able to get a lot of tower platings in this mid lane thanks to the Gorilla turret as well. So overall, really a huge advantage here for Esubacz, being able to take both the objectives. But you can see when it comes to the fights, it's going to be so difficult to try and shut down the likes of the Xayah, especially with the feathers in the end. And even if the Jarvan tries to use his ultimate in, it can be quite difficult to try and keep afraid some of these champions. As we see the Ornn getting caught out and actually cancelled in the end and has to use a flash to get away, but there's only one flash that you can get right now, and the flash away means that the Cataclysm can come through from the Jarvan. That's another kill over to Esubacz and another kill over to Xayah, and this Xayah is getting very, very far ahead.
Yeah, it's a powerful situation to be in, right? When you're the Jarvan and you're kind of just knowing that your enemy's waiting for you to use your ultimate, the Cataclysm, and then you're like, oh man, I'm already pretty much low health, so I'm gonna have to flash out anyway, and then using the Cataclysm to chase you down. I mean, that's got to be satisfying for the side of Esubacz, especially how far they were playing on the back foot in game one against Capybaras. They are actually matching the pace and actually outpacing them in that gold lead currently for around about 1k gold. Like you said earlier, they was able to get both of those neutral objectives for themselves, which is again a great footing into the early game, which they did not have in game one.
And they're going to be using that towards their advantage. All these early game champions that can really be used to help during these early fights. The likes of the Lilia with the movement speed. The Swain, if you can land any sort of crowd control with the Jarvan as well, it's going to be so difficult. Interesting enough here that Severe's decided to go for Mortal Reminder as the first item. It's not bad as a first item now, since they changed the armor penetration. You now get the full armor penetration. Doesn't matter at what time of the game you actually buy it. Whereas before, it was more to do with scaling. The more levels you have, the more armor penetration you get. So really trying to, get through the likes of the armor from the Jarvan, from the Olaf, and even the Swain as well. Even though none of them are building armor at the moment, they still have a lot of base armor. But it's also the anti-heal as well, because the Lilia is going to be healing the Swain and also the Olaf. But it does mean that she is going to be sacrificing some of her own survivability from the likes of the Bloodthirster.
Yeah, I think it's a really good call here for the Severe, especially having so much healing on the side of ESB from the Olaf, from the Swain, like you said there. But it can only sort of get better when they start to build that armor onto the Jarvan. It's then going to just be another shred tool for the side of ACES. But right now, we're kind of seeing a little bit of tit for tat. It is going to be Hans actually just trying to focus and do a bit more of a micro play into the Baron lane, just to get some of that lane priority back for himself. And that is answered by Esubacz, by taking the T1 into the mid lane. So a few turret trades across the map now, but it could be vital for the side of Esubacz because Fiora has a big fat red minion wave up there, and it looks like that turret is not actually going to be there able to take this beating from this one. We see Olaf and Lilia rotating around to just try and stop that push.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to stop the push for now, but I think it's going to be so difficult. The later this game goes, the more difficult it is going to be for this Olaf to try and protect against this Fiora. The next dragon is coming up in 35 seconds. It's a big objective for Almighty Capybara to take, because you don't want the side of Esubacz to be one dragon away from that Dragon Soul, which in this game is going to be mountain, so it's going to be more tankiness and more shielding over to whatever side picks it. So they want to try and deny that away. You can see that the vision is actually in the favor at the moment of Almighty Capybara, putting some deep wards in the enemy jungle, but that is going to be cleared out for it is going to be cleared out by Swain, I should say, in the bottom side of the map. So no vision at all for the side of Almighty Capybaras in this bottom side of the jungle, so they do have to be careful when they're looking to face check. But as you can see, the dragon is already started in this fight, so they're actually using the ultimate straight away, and you have the engage as well from the Java. The Cataclysm is going to be absolutely huge when it comes out. They try and dive onto the Xayah, onto the backline. The Fiora is dashing in as well, but they can't kill them at all. The counter engage is absolutely huge. The Severe is going to take one kill back, but it's a 4-for-2 trade in the favor of Esubacz, and they're going to secure the dragon as well. So that's going to be one dragon away from the Dragon Soul, and they're going to try and put in more pressure, but it all comes down to that Jarvan engage again into the backline, just zoning out the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not great at maths, but 4 kills is definitely better than 2. And added on top there with an added addition of the Drake there, now 2 out of 3, just one step closer to that Dragon Soul, is definitely a better trade for Esubacz in that one. And this game too is definitely representing the Esubacz that we know from day one. They were very good, very calculated, very much been able to set the pace for themselves. And this is the best thing about these MOBAs, right? Is just making sure that you are able to set the pace and then maintain it. And right now, Esubacz is displaying that with perfection. They obviously aren't behind with the turrets either. They're ahead with those. So it's just making sure that they can keep and give that Baron lane the TLC that it deserves.
You can see that the gold lead is still not that big. It's only like a 1,000, maybe 2,000 gold lead at the moment. Both teams trying to posture around this Baron. Everyone knows how strong this Baron can be once it does get taken. Esubacz were the ones yesterday sneaking away that Baron before. It looks like they're trying to create pressure around this top side of the map. They're going in, just trying to sneak around, just trying to see where the players of Esubacz are. And you can see that Baron lane wave is already pushing in. They're actually going to be starting off this Baron, which is going to be very risky indeed. The Baron's going to be doing a little bit of damage here to Esubacz. But meanwhile, it looks like the minion wave for Esubacz in the bottom side of the map as well is also stacking up towards that bottom lane tower. So someone on the side of Almighty Capybaras have to try and go towards this bottom side of the map to catch the wave, to try and catch the minions, because that's going to be a lot of experience maybe lost there. But both teams just posturing around at the moment, trying to find the right engage. And there it is with the Cataclysm, but it's only onto the front line of Almighty Capybaras. Xayah with the feathers going long, but Xayah actually doesn't do enough damage, and Severe gets first blood. Xayah actually gets knocked up in the end as well, but uses the ultimate with the feathers to get onto the onto the back line goes the Fiora, and this is how annoying the Fiora can be. So many dashes, so many ways to get onto the back, and actually going to be able to survive. But again, a 2-for-1 trade, a very even trade, but Esubacz, they need to try and defend against this Baron Nashor. There are low health bars on the side of Almighty Capybara. Jarvan actually misses the flash and drag onto the Severe, and it's going to be potentially Baron Nashor secured. The ultimate is back up again onto the Xayah, the flash forward from Fiora, and that is another kill secured for Almighty Capybaras. They're not healthy enough to take the Baron, but they take the goal lead back in their favors eventually, and they're also going to be able to take a few kills.
Yeah, I feel like the gold lead was the only thing they really got from that whole team fight, right? Because, I mean, there was so much kind of disengage, re-engage, disengage, re-engage that it kind of meant that the momentum for the Baron Nashor wasn't a feasible option because they were just all damaged. They were, by the time they could have gone for it, 3 of the members were back up for Esubacz, so they were able to take down the other 2. And then they had to kind of recall because it was also unhealthy. But right now, Olaf is here. Fiora taking a lot of damage from those axes as well. They're going to be careful because Swain comes in from the left flank as well. Ornn's ultimate coming through. Swain goes down thanks to the Morgana as well. There is the knock up onto the Jarvan, but he's able to soak up a lot of that damage already from Almighty Capybara Elites, but he is going to get taken down in the end. Fiora coming in with the clutch kill with the knock up onto the Ornn. It's going to be a double kill for Hearts, and this is what they needed in that first fight for the Baron, is that clear, concise team fight.
Jarvan is not able to get onto the backline with this ultimate. The ultimate comes on through, but they don't really have a lot of follow-up. The Olaf is on the opposite side of the map trying to shut down the Fiora, and everyone else is there, and the fight is just completely split for Esubacz. There's just a miscommunication in the end. A few of the members of trying to chase down the Fiora, trying to kill Fiora, and a few members trying to fight towards the Baron. But you're just at a disadvantage towards the Baron, so the Severe can flash forward, could do a bunch of damage, and that AoE damage from the boomerangs as well just makes it so difficult to try and deal with. And you can see in the end, the Almighty Capybara are able to take that Baron, take the T-Hex eventually. Someone go back to base and take the T-Hex. Oh, there we go. Ornn's going back to base. Takes away the T-Hex. They do need to be a little bit careful though, because the have to use the flash to get away. But this is again a really big fight for Almighty Capybara. The Fiora is going to go jump into the backline onto the Xayah, forces out the ultimate straight away. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Lilia gets taken down already, and here comes the T-Hex, a big bad boy, dashing in, shielding, giving the team the whole bunch of movement speed. 2 more kills over to Almighty Capybara. They might not even need the dragon in the end. Esubacz will 1 dragon away from that dragon soul, but they don't need to take it away from them. They can just take the game from them instead and finish this series 2-0. Morgana just chasing down the Jarvan. Not really much you could do. The Xayah does get 1 kill, but does not matter. The T-Hex ends the game. Russia make it through to the grand final.
I think the funniest part about that whole thing was just the interaction between Morgana and Jarvan at the bot part of that lane. It was just it's just like, hey, we're just going tit for tat. We're just going to chase each other. You know we're going to win. You're not going to go back to your base and try and clear those minion waves. And again, I think it was just the ultimatum that was given over to Esubacz. It's kind of like that false fate of trying to get the Drake Soul as well was kind of what they were going for towards the end there. They made that the priority, but then they also kind of lost the focus of the team fight, which really was a detriment because you saw at that early part of the team fight, Xayah took too much damage from Fiora.
It was just incredible in the end just to see the comeback as well from Almighty Capybara in the end, because it wasn't all smooth sailing in this game. They definitely struggled a bit more in this game than they did in the previous one. I think in the end, it came down to the likes of the Jarvan and the Swain just being so big on the front line. And, trying to get onto the Xayah on the back line is always going to be a very difficult task here for Almighty Capybaras. But in the end, I think it was Esubacz just being a bit hesitant in terms of the engage and also being completely split as well. There were times where they were at a disadvantage at one side of the fight, and they were trying to chase down the Fiora, and the Fiora just wouldn't die. So the entire time that they're chasing down the Fiora, they are a disadvantage on the other side of the fight. So even though the Jarvan comes in, the Swain goes in and does a bunch of damage, they just don't have enough to try and break it down. And it all comes down to make sure that you can actually execute these fights to perfection. And that's exactly what Almighty Capybaras were able to do in the end, and they will secure their ticket into the grand final.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give it over to Esubacz, though. That last game was definitely theirs to take, but there just wasn't the execution to actually finish it, to the finishing blow onto the side of the Capybaras to actually get the Hercules heel from the Capybaras. I'm not too sure where that is autonomously on a Capybara. I mean, I'll probably ask Google to see where it is. Is it the same place as a human? We don't know. But hey, somehow the Capybaras was able to keep it protected and take down Esubacz in this best of 3. And it was not as clean as game 1, and it really showed that Esubacz definitely had what it takes to try and go up against the Capybaras, as they faltered in game 1 very obviously, whereas in game 2 it was definitely more of a brawl, and I really like seeing that from Esubacz.
Oh, exactly.